Hey guys, it's Magnus Robert here, and of course, it's Oscar season. And I decided to set a little bit of a challenge for myself this year, and that was to watch every single one of the Oscar 2024 nominees, but not just like Best Picture. I'm watching every single film that has been nominated, including all of the shorts. Now, I have completed that as of today. So I've decided to rank them all from worst to best. And I'll also talk about when we get to each film, I'll talk about which category I think it should win in. Now, I'm not going to be going through things that I think have been snubbed or anything like that. We're just sticking to the films that have been nominated for an award. And I figured we'll just start with the shorts. I'm going to rank the shorts separately to the full features because I don't think it's really fair to rank them, together. So let's just start it off with the shorts from worst to best, and then once we've got that out of the way, we can do all the feature films. Number 15 is The After. In my opinion, the worst of the shorts. Just for me, it kind of starts off in a very comedic way. Like, it's meant to be about a man processing grief, I suppose, and then overcoming it. But the way that his family dies is so comical that it sort of ripped me out of the film. And then the way that he processes the grief, just like it's him sitting in a taxi and stuff, like listening to his like clients or customers, whatever. To me, it just didn't really get me, and it felt kind of, yeah, like I said, the tone was ruined by that ridiculous death scene. So for me, it was the worst. The Last Repair Shop. Honestly, I found it boring as shit, okay? Some documentaries can really, really grab me, and those types of documentaries I really, really adore. When it's a subject that I honestly don't care about, yet it still draws me in. And a lot of the time that is the case with like really well-made documentaries. This one, I was just bored to tears, honestly. I liked some of the cinematography. Pachyderm? I think I'm saying that wrong, but I don't care. Yeah, this one was entirely forgettable. Like I don't even remember what happened. I think there was a girl, and there was like grandparents, and I think there was like a horn or some weird thing. Yeah, honestly, a bit forgettable for me. So that's why it's here. But if you liked it, hey, that's cool. It's also French, so that's a negative, of course. Our Uniform. So this is an Iranian animation, I believe, and it's basically like a girl sort of going over, obviously, her sort of uniform, but also like her memories and kind of tailing throughout her life. I really dig some of the animation in this. I think it's so cool. There'll be a shot of her, uniform, and there'll be like some animation overlaying over it. That makes sense. Yeah, that stuff was awesome, but there was just no story, and it's like this kind of almost felt like a documentary that was animated. And for a second, I thought that that's what it was. But then I realized it was in Best Animation. So for me, there's no substance to it. There's really cool visuals, don't get me wrong. But I don't know, for me there was no like story. It was kind of just someone telling about their life, and yeah, it's tragic, it's horrible, but yeah, I didn't get it. It's not for me. The ABCs of Book Banning. So this is an interesting documentary. My biggest issue with it is it just sort of, it has one thing to say but nothing else, and that's kind of my problem with it. So it's basically just going through a bunch of books that have been banned in American schools because of like new legislation. Now, a lot of these are LGBT books, or sort of, what do you call it, like Black History books, or sort of civil rights books. There was obviously, I think as well, it was like Anne Frank's diary was banned. And although it's interesting and it brings awareness, it doesn't really have much more to say than these books. It's probably stupid that these books are banned. Like, kids are kind of intelligent. And, they have some, like, interviews with kids as well who sort of say that it's really stupid. And it is. But it's sort of proven a point that I already kind of believed in anyway. And I think you're not going to change the minds of the conservatives who believe these books shouldn't be taught to children. I mean, I agree with the message. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I just didn't really have anything more to say, I suppose. So I didn't get it. Although I kind of dig the way it was sort of presented. It was quite almost like a slideshow, and I kind of liked it. War is Over, with music inspired by, was it John and Yoko, is it? Listen, A lot of people on Reddit were saying this was the worst animation, and I understand why they were saying that, because it's like quite generic, like there's nothing too special with the animation, but I like the story. I'm a story guy, okay? I'm not an animation guy. I'm not massive on animation normally. I normally only really watch them for the Oscars, okay? And this film was cute. It was a cute ass film, okay? The soldiers playing chess, the sort of soldiers on two different sides playing chess, and that poor pigeon. I thought it was really cool, alright? I digged it. So it's here. The Barber of Little Rock. So this is kind of an example of a documentary which it's a subject I really didn't give a shit about, but it kind of, made me interested in it. Basically, it's about this barber who kind of also is like a financial loan dude. I remember really liking it. I don't remember all the specifics, but he basically gives out like grants and stuff to people. I found it quite interesting. I didn't know that such a thing existed. I found the people it was following fairly interesting. I don't remember exactly anything special about it being shot or anything, but overall it was quite good. I found it quite enjoyable, so yeah, that's why it's here. Letter to a Pig. The animation was insane in this. I loved it. Story, I had no idea what the frick was going on. I did a little bit, but yeah, the animation of this is kind of almost surreal and spooky at times. Highly recommend this one. I liked it a lot. Red, White and Blue. Okay, we're back to live action short films. I understand why this film was made, and I guess the sort of the contemporary relevance of this film is important for sure. It's just a little too cliche for me. I loved it up until the point where I saw the twist coming from a million miles away, and it was not surprising at all when they dropped the reveal at the abortion clinic. Yeah, it's an abortion film, by the way. Yeah, the twist. I saw the twist coming. It didn't surprise me, and I guess it kind of annoyed me because of that reason. All right, that's why it's not any higher. But I did like it up until I saw the twist coming, which was round about the time where I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, I saw it coming. Island in Between, which is a short documentary. Now, I knew nothing about this when I watched this. I think this one's on YouTube, yeah. It's basically about an island that's in between Taiwan and China, and we're following this, the documentary maker, I suppose, his kind of memories of it, and sort of the different kind of the politics, the traditions, that kind of thing. I found it like really, really interesting. I thought it was a very well presented short documentary. It was a subject I knew nothing about. I didn't even know that there was a tiny little island in between Taiwan and China. And I found it pretty interesting, so it goes here. 95 Senses. So this is a animated short film, and I believe this one in particular should get the award for Best Animated Short. So this is the last of the animated stuff. I'm not a big animation fan, so if I've undersold some of these animations, let me know if you're big animation fans, because I just feel, for me, I don't know, the short films this year weren't that great. Now, 95 Senses, though, I thought was very good, actually. It's about a man on death row, and he's sort of going through his life and how he ended up on death row, and it kind of does it through the theme of your senses. Like, I smell this, I saw this, I heard this, which I think is an interesting, gimmick, I suppose, to tell this story. So overall, I really enjoyed it. I think the animation in it was very interesting, very unique at times, and I thought the story was compelling too. So, all round, it was a pretty good film. So I give this one the award for Best Animated Short Film. Clarify, it might not get the award, but this is the one I think should be the winner of Best Animated Short Film. Invincible. Now, unfortunately, this is a short French film, which is never good. But basically, this is about a boy, which is based off a real life experience, a real person, young man, boy, who unfortunately did die. And it's based on his captivity, I guess, or what do you call it, detainment in a youth sort of young offenders hostel thing. I don't know exactly what the technical term for it is. And it's sort of going through the motions of his life leading up to his suicide. Yeah, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was really, really well done, and I wanted to put it a little bit higher, but I just liked the others a little bit more. But honestly, this one was really, really good, and I wouldn't be upset if this one got the award for best short film, live action short film. But there is one I think which is better, which is The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. Wait, this one isn't winning best live action short film. Okay, I forgot that there was another live action short film. Doesn't matter though. The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. So this is a Wes Anderson film. I felt like they nominated this because they didn't nominate Asteroid City for anything. I don't know. Was that within the? I feel like that was last year, right? Anyway, yeah. The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. Look, I really love it. I think it's brilliant. The style's really awesome. It's based off like a Roald Dahl book. It's completely wild. The story just goes from like one person to another person to another person, and then back to Henry Sugar, who's played by Benedict Cumberbatch. Yeah, it's a pretty wild, wacky story, and I love it. There's a lot of cool elements to it. It's typical Wes Anderson, but it works really well with the source material, which is adapting, which is just like this short Roald Dahl story. So overall, I think it was brilliant. But there is one more live-action short film which I think is better, and that is Night of Fortune. So what can I say about this one? This short film, I think, just resonated with me a lot more. I love some of the cinematography. The acting, I think, is amazing. And it's such, like, almost a surreal story. And I'm a big fan of surrealism, I suppose. So, I'm biased. But this film just has this very unique way of processing grief. So it's about a man whose wife is dead, and he's unable to sort of open the coffin to look at her face, I guess. And he meets this other guy who also has a strange way of processing grief. We'll just leave it at that. And I think it's comedic in areas, it's tragic in others, and I think it blended that comedy and that tragedy very well. Is it entirely like unique and original? Of course not. It's dealing with themes that I think have been done to death. But I think it did it in a unique and interesting way, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So that's why I think this is the best live-action short film. It's not going to win, I know that for sure, but I think it should win. So I'm giving it my award for best live-action short film. Grandma and Grandma is the number one for the short films. So for me, this is the best of the short films, and also by default, the best short documentary. So it gets my little award for best documentary short out of the Oscar selected stuff. What can I say about this one? It's just kind of sweet. It's such a sweet little short sort of window into these two women's lives. I mean, these are two Chinese women who kind of live together. Their children are married, I think. Yeah, their two children are married, and so they live together as mother-in-laws, I guess. And they just have this fun little dynamic with each other. It's hilarious in parts, but it's also quite educational for the time periods that they lived through, and also their lives currently today. I thought it was really cute, really well done. Some great cinematography. I love documentaries that really like experiment with the cinematography and lighting and things like that. And this one definitely did that. It wasn't just boring talking heads. It was more than that. And for that reason, for me, this is the best short film and the best documentary short film. So, yeah. So that is it for the shorts, all ranked from worst to best. Now we're going to move on to the big one, which is all the feature films that have been nominated for an award. Doesn't matter what award, they're all here, ranked from worst to best, starting off with, in my opinion, the worst of all of the films that were nominated, feature films that were nominated, is, unfortunately, Elemental. Okay, so it's a Pixar film. That's, they're normally great, but this one for me, I just felt was very generic. There wasn't anything very interesting with the animation, especially. I found it almost ugly. It was kind of gross. Some of the world building stuff and the world that they build is like okay at times, but it just feels like so generic. It almost feels like an AI kind of wrote this, And yeah, the characters were very surface level. Their arcs were very, obvious. Like we knew where they were gonna go. Some of the kind of social commentary, I guess, that this kind of says is very hand-fisted. And I don't know if I assume it's intentional, of like immigrant families coming in and things like that. But there was no nuance with it at all. And I know it's a kids film, and you have to you kind of make the message obvious, but yeah, it just didn't resonate with me. I think other Pixar films have done messages like that better in the past, or other animations for that matter. So for me, this one was just generic, just too generic for me. Would I say it was terrible? I would say it was bad. I wouldn't say it was like terrible. I think it was still meh, But if I was to say was it good or bad, I would definitely say bad. So that's Elemental. The creator. So I know a lot of people love this film as like a revolutionary sci-fi sort of new entry, and I can get it. But for me, I just found it boring. So boring. Some of the visuals in this are great. I think the two main characters, though, the boy and the main man, the generic main man, I don't know what his name was, I forget, they were boring. Like, they were not interesting characters at all. And that was probably my main problem with the film, was the story was just a yawn. The world was interesting. The visuals were very good. I loved a lot of aspects of it, but the story is just not there. And it's it's a problem with a lot of these like interesting, cool sci-fi or fantasy stuff. It's like Avatar. Like, I like Avatar for the visuals. I don't like Avatar for the story. And I sort of criticize Avatar a lot because I think it's boring, really. And I think the same is true for the creator. For me, get a better story, and I think I would have loved this film a lot more. So it's right here. It's right down in the pits with Elemental. I apologize for any massive creator fans, though. Okay, I'm sure if you loved it, if you enjoyed it, and you would put it higher, fair enough. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. It's not my film series. I've seen a handful of Mission Impossibles. I've seen the first one, and I think I saw not the last one, but the one before that in cinema. And I've always had the same opinion of all the films. They're all pretty much the same in the sense that they follow the same sort of story beats. I found some of the dialogue, like, it irked me a lot, like, especially the one with Simon Pegg saying, like, oh, we're all friends. That was, like, his darkest secret. Oh, no, his secret was that he cares for his friends. Do you know, like, some of that was kind of cringe, Vanessa Kirby and Tom Cruise, though, I think are excellent in their performance, and I think some of the stunts are insane, and I think Tom Cruise kind of deserves something for that, for his stunts are absolutely mental. And yeah, there was some elements I liked about it. It's too long, though. It's far too long. It's such a long film, and the fact that this is part one of a, there's going to be a second part. Hell, maybe there's a third. Who knows? Yeah, I'm not interested in the second part, and the fact that I'm not interested in the second part is, for me, telling. So I'm putting it here. If you're a Mission Impossible fan, I understand why you love this shit. Okay, I get it. It's totally cool, but it's just not my cup of tea, unfortunately. So it's going here. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So I know I'm going to be crucified for putting this above not one, not two, but three films, especially two films that I've seen a lot of people highly praise, that both the creator and Dead Reckoning Part 1. And to be fair, I've seen a lot of people who defend Elemental as well. So why do I have Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny so high when it was critically kind of hated, I suppose? And maybe it just comes down to the fact that it's like so bad it's good. Maybe it's that, I'm not sure. But I kind of enjoyed this. I sort of put off watching this because I was a massive Indiana Jones fan, the original trilogy, and then I watched The Crystal Skull, and I absolutely despised it, and I sort of swore never to touch anything Indiana Jones that's ever made again. And then they decided to make Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny, and I just didn't watch it. I didn't watch it in cinema, and I refused to watch it when it came out on VOD or when it came out on Blu-ray, etc., etc. And then it was nominated for an Oscar, and I thought, shit, I'm gonna have to watch it, because I like to try and watch as many of these people every year, and this year I tasked myself with watching every single one. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to watch it. So I watched it, and maybe it's because my expectations were so low, but I kind of loved parts of it. Is it great? Of course not. But I think the story's there. You know, the story's interesting. Some of the acting is awful. Like the Phoebe Waller-Bridge's sidekick, that guy can't act. Why the hell was he hired? I don't understand that. And is Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character sort of annoying? Like, she's annoying, sure, but I don't think she's ever meant to be like this greater explorer than Indy. I don't think at least that's not the interpretation I got. But I heard a lot of people kind of, claim this is a woke film and that a strong woman is taking over Indy. But I don't know, I didn't see it. Like, A, Indy's an old man, right? So his best days are behind him. And B, she was entirely flawed. She wasn't like a Mary Sue at all. She was arrogant. She was an arsehole. And I think that was intended. At least I don't understand how that could not be intended. So maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But I thought the time traveling stuff was kind of cool, I thought that was kind of neat. So I like that. I like that aspect. And I think overall the film didn't feel long like Mission Impossible did or the creator did. The runtime went right past. And maybe that's because of some of the hilarious antics, like seeing Indy do some like tricks is ridiculous considering his age. The de-aging was quite good as well. Like, I didn't really throw me off too much. So yeah, overall I didn't mind it. I thought it was an okay film. Sue me. Nimona. So, a couple aspects of this I really loved. I really liked the fact that they combined the imagery of like knights and that kind of medieval aesthetic with the futuristic aspect. I thought that was such a cool sort of thing. I don't know, it's probably been done before, don't get me wrong, but I really liked it. The animation was really cool and unique and interesting at times. They kind of switch it up with a lot of the flashbacks as well, which is cool. And at first, I really loved the story. I thought it was pretty interesting, this kind of murder mystery of who killed the queen, who really killed the queen. And the character we follow, I think, is interesting. I remember him quite well. And also he's gay, which is like, wow, a gay character in animation. In gay characters in films is like, you see them all the time now. But like in animation, it's quite rare. So that was kind of cool and neat, I guess. And then my issue is the story it was going so good, and then it just plummets into generic kind of, and I saw everything coming, and the twist of who Nimona really was so obvious to me, and I don't know what can I say. It started off strong, and it went massively downhill, so I don't know what more to say, really. That's my commentary. Flamin' Hot, the Cheeto film. When I first saw this, I thought, Flamin' Hot, I wonder what that's about. And I read it a little bit, and I was like, oh. Because when I read it, I thought Flamin' Hot Cheetos, right? But I thought it can't be a film about Cheetos. And it is. This is on the verge of corporate propaganda, but I understand that it's almost like a biopic film in a sense for one of the executives of Flamin' Hot Cheeto, well, of the Cheetos parent company. I forget the name now. And I kind of liked some parts, but like overall, it's so. I hate using the word generic because I feel like I've used it a million times now, but it's a by the books biopic film almost, and I doubt this is how it really happened as well. I don't know. It just feels fake. Even though it's a real story, it feels fake. Now, maybe this is entirely truthful, and I will retract that criticism, I guess. But it doesn't, that's not the only indictment I have on this film. What else can I say? It's shot not particularly interesting. I think some of the dialogue is cringe as hell. The whole film feels almost like a propaganda piece. So that's why it's here. That's why it's this low. Why is it this high, though? In terms of that, well, I'm sorry. but it's a film on Flaming Hot Cheetos. I mean, that gets some props. No, I think there was aspects I liked about it. I like some of the... I normally do love stories about an underdog kind of, rising up the ranks. I think that's really cool to me, because that's kind of what I want to do, so it's inspirational. So I think that manipulation sort of grabbed me a little bit, I feel. And I thought the main actor was pretty good too. So what can I say? That's Flaming Hot Cheetos, the movie. Napoleon. Now, I watched this one in cinema when it first came out, and I refused to rewatch it. So for me, I already watched it, so it classifies as a watch. Like, I can't watch this one again. I just can't. I found it so grating. It was so not boring, but just not enough. My biggest issue with this film is some of the, not even like the historical contradictions or the historical inaccuracies. I kind of agree with Ridley Scott when he sort of says that, well, an adaptation is different. An adaptation, you can mess with history. That's okay. And I kind of agree to an extent. That's fine to do. You can change little elements that help with the drama. But my problem is I don't think they helped with the drama. I think it would have been better to stick with the history a bit better, a bit more. Part of the problem with this is it kind of is trying to be two films in one. It's trying to be like a romance film between, Josephine and Napoleon and their kind of love life. And then it's also trying to be like sort of underdog war story where with Napoleon, and his various battles. And the problem is it takes such a wide portion of Napoleon's life, like from him, becoming emperor to him, or even before him becoming emperor, to his death. It takes such a huge portion, and that's like many, many years, but it feels like the space of two. Like, it doesn't feel like time has passed, and that's mainly because both Napoleon and Josephine don't look older. They look the same age in like the very first scene to the very last scene. Another thing is Josephine's death, how that's handled, is just, considering this was such a huge plot line, her death was just kind of like an afterthought. It was like, oh, it happened or whatever. It almost felt like a Coen Brothers, like, death off screen, you know what I mean? Like, but there was no emotional weight to Napoleon as a character. That was the problem. Her death can be off screen, that's fine. It's just there was no weight to it. And the whole film's just messy. It's just so messy. Like, there's some awesome visuals in the film, don't get me wrong. And there's some cool moments. And I think some of the acting by Joaquin Phoenix is great. But overall, the film is the worst Ridley Scott has ever done, I feel. One of the worst he's ever done. Yeah, I didn't like it. I really didn't like it, and I refuse to rewatch it. So I think that's a condemning indictment on it. Does that make sense? Let's move on. American Fiction. So from this point on, from this film onwards, I think all of these films I like to some degree, and I think are good to some degree. The ones before it, for me, didn't quite cut the mark, but all the ones up till now are good. So American Fiction, why is it this low? Now, this one is the first one that's been nominated for a Best Picture that I've got on the list. Now, I just don't think it deserves Best Picture. I think that's insane to me. It's a comedy, first and foremost, and the Academy don't normally give comedies the light of day. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't. They definitely should. I think comedy and horror have definitely been overlooked by the Academy. But this particular comedy was just... I didn't find anything particularly special with, especially in the way it's shot. And some of the acting I thought was, it was good, but it wasn't, like, exceptional. So to me, it's just really random that this has been nominated for so many awards. What else can I say about it? Was it funny? Yeah, it was funny. It served as a comedy. It has some interesting political messaging. I found the story quite, riveting and funny in the fact that, this guy was publishing a book that was basically every stereotype ever, and he was hoping to sell it, to prove a point, and his point kind of gets proven. But from that, there's not really much more to the film. All the personal stuff I just didn't find interesting. Or like him dating that woman and the issues with his family. None of that to me was very interesting because it wasn't focused on enough. But then I feel like if they focused on it more, that would have maybe taken away from the comedic element of the story. So I maybe it was just the wrong combination of plot lines. Maybe that was the issue. I'm not sure. For me, anyway. If you found this laugh out loud, fair enough. I'm not black and I'm not an American, so maybe a lot of the story and comedy is lost on me. Sure. But for me personally, I just don't understand why it's nominated for an award, for the Best Picture at least. Is it good? It's good. Don't get me wrong. I liked it overall. I'd put it in my good pile. It's just at the very bottom of my good pile. So that's American Fiction. Past Lives. It's wall to wall Best Pictures here. So this one, I think I might get a lot of flack for. Who knows? Because I saw a lot of people love this film. I didn't love it that much. I like elements of it. We'll say that. Now I love some of the cinematography. I kind of really appreciate the fact that they had this love triangle story, but they're very mature, and I don't know if I'd say realistic, but they're very mature with it. Like, none of the characters are in the wrong, I feel. They all kind of do the right thing, I suppose. But the problem with that is there's no story. There's no conflict, there's no drama. The whole film is conversations and memories, and we don't get to the central conflict until like way late in the film, when of course we do the time skip. But the problem with that is there's no real story. We're just watching these people interact, and it's kind of like a will they won't they at first, and then we have this really jarring time skip where she's married and he's off single or whatever. I think he's got an ex-girlfriend or whatever it may be, and then we sort of have him come to New York, and then this sort of conflict bubble up again, I guess. But there's no conflict because no one does anything. There's not even like a kiss or a hug or like a misinterpretation. And maybe those are cliche, but they're cliche for a reason. They're cliche for the fact that generates drama, that generates conflict. And my problem with it is there is none. There's no drama, there's no conflict. I like it as like a vibes film, I guess, but not enough to put it any higher. So that's why Past Lives is here. Golda. It is wild that the Oscars nominated this during the stuff that's going on in Gaza right now, but fair dues. So, putting politics aside and whatever you feel about Israel and the Palestinians and the Arab states surrounding Israel, let's just focus this as an art piece, okay? As someone's depiction of the life of Golda Meir. And I feel like they didn't depict it necessarily in a great light or a terrible light. It was fairly neutral. At least that was my interpretation. Like, she seems fairly incompetent at times, but also fairly sympathetic and understanding at times. And so maybe that was the right move, or was it the wrong move? I mean, either way, people are gonna hate it. Like, you're not gonna win, are you? There was parts I loved about this film. I liked a lot of the cinematography, especially the shots where she like sort of smokes and kind of breathes in the camera. Is it cliche? But it kind of worked. I think it's such a complex war, and they kind of dumbed it down. And sure, for historic points, that's probably bad. I wouldn't use this as a history lesson, of course, especially when it's probably not impartial, but. It made the conflict easy to understand, unlike sort of Napoleon, where it was, even though I'm quite familiar with Napoleonic War, it was a bit confusing at times. This one was, it was well thought out, and I'm less familiar with this war. Golda Meir, I think the actress was very good in the role. I think she really, it was a great performance, and there's not really much more to say. I think overall it just was not a massively impressive biopic, but definitely not a terrible biopic. It was kind of mediocre, and that's why it's here. Golda. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Wow, we're doing Marvel films now? Okay, so I love the Guardians of the Galaxy films. I think they're probably my favourite of the MCU. I think Guardians is probably my favourite MCU film from the ones I've seen. I am, like everyone, I was fatigued with the MCU just before Endgame, and so I'm definitely fatigued of the MCU. To be honest, I don't watch any of them really anymore. But this is one I did watch in cinemas because, I like the Guardians of the Galaxy. I think it's the one, like, shining light in the MCU. And did this one disappoint? Not really. It was really fun. I think it was comedic at times. It was heartbreaking at times. The villain was brilliant and well performed. Overall, I mean, some of the world building was brilliant. But why is it this low? Why isn't it any higher? I think it's probably the worst of the Guardians films, not including that holiday special. But I just don't think they did anything special really with it. It didn't feel like one, the punchy of one with this sort of found family, and the punchy of two with the themes of fatherhood. And I know a lot of people kind of rag on Volume 2, but I really love Volume 2. If this was Volume 2, it would be a lot more higher. I just have issues with the way that it ended, and I think some of the conflict kind of going in, like Rocket kind of is like his I never feel like he's going to die. Do you know what I mean? Like I kind of conceded that he's gonna live, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe if they had killed him off, or maybe if his death was more severe, like, you know, he's like missing an arm or some shit, they made him like more severe, maybe that the emotional weight would have been there. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of tragic moments in this film, and there was a lot of things I loved about it, but the sort of ending, the final act, I think let it down for me. And it's silly, it's goofy, it's fun, but some of the other films I just think were better presented, so that's why it's here. Bobby Wine, the People's President. So for me, this sounded like the most interesting documentary for me, because I really love these kind of stories of, you know, underdogs who try and you know, overcome sort of authoritarian figures. I find those stories very interesting, and I knew a very little about Bobby Wine before this. I think I've heard one story about him before. So Bobby Wine is a singer, and he runs for a member of parliament, I believe, and then of course he tries to run for president or prime minister or whatever it is, and he's unsuccessful. Spoilers, of course, of Uganda. And of course there's many shady things going on with the Ugandan government, like trying to stop him and his supporters, and it's a struggle film. That's what it's about. And I really liked it. I really did. I just wish it was presented a bit better. I think it was a bit messy at times, the way it was presented. Overall, it was great. It was a really interesting story. It's a National Geographic, so you're never going to get anything like crazy amazing for documentary, I feel. I don't know, maybe it's just them. But I found the story really, really interesting. I think Bobby Wine is a very interesting person. I keep using the same bloody word. But he's a cool person, okay? Apart from some of the things he said about gay people, which I learned about. But yeah, I wish it was just maybe edited or shot a bit better. I'm not sure what it was. I think the presentation for me just wasn't there. So that is Bobby Wine, the People's President. But overall, great. I really liked it. American Symphony. Now, I thought, when I first saw this film and what it was about, I thought, Jesus Christ, that is going to be boring as shit. So I watched it in bed, alright? And I thought, I'll just fall asleep to it. But it gripped me. It really did. It's an interesting story. And I think John, the guy it follows, is a documentary, of course. The guy it follows is, like, I love him. I think he's an amazing guy. Like, he's so positive about everything. He's so understanding. He's so empathetic. I want to be that man. I think he's amazing. I think he's so chill and so, he's such a great guy. You know, he stood by his girlfriend, or his fiance, or his wife. I think he marries her, right? Thick and thin, and their relationship is just really interesting. Like, so perfect almost. I mean, maybe there's something behind closed doors we're not seeing, and that's possibly always the case. Let's be honest. But yeah, I just thought it was a really neat story. It was nothing crazy. It was nothing like a massive hurdle that he has to overcome. It's just he wants to do this massive symphony, you know, this combination of black artists in this kind of opera style symphony, and that's all it is. It's very simple, and it's just the journey that he's going on as he's going through that, but also his personal life, the stuff with his fiance, and his kind of disdain for his fame. And he wins like an award, and people are bashing him because he won the award, but he's like the most humble dude ever, and you feel for him, really. It's not fair. Like, he didn't choose to get that award. And yeah, I really liked it. What can I say? Maybe it's because my expectations were so low that I ended up loving it. But I knew nothing about this dude, and now I would like to meet him and be him. I don't know, I'm joking, of course. But his drive, everything about him is so interesting, and I think he's a very neat character study, that's for sure. Barbie. So this is quite low, you might think, and it probably is. Maybe I should put it higher. We'll see. I don't think so though. I initially did have it higher, but I rewatched it in light of doing this list, and I've decided to put it lower just for the fact that I think the other films just are better stories for me, at least, and I enjoyed them more. I like this film a lot, though, don't get me wrong. I love a lot of the costume, the costume design, the sets are really awesome. Everything like that is just great. I love the sort of surrealist nature with some of the comedy. I think that's cool. My biggest issue with this film is gotta be the political messaging. I just think it's too on the nose. It's too hand-fisted. And it's not like this film is for kids, really. It's kind of, I think it's a 12A, right? But it's got a lot of adult themes in it, and adult topics. But the messaging is like, it's like feminism for toddlers. And maybe that's what it should be. Maybe that's the reason. But it kind of is a little bit, not insulting, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure where I put how to put it, really. And as a story, I just think it's not anything crazy amazing. It's fun. It's a fun, silly, goofy film, right? But I don't think it's anything groundbreaking that people are claiming like it is. I like it. Don't get me wrong. I really do. I just don't think it's a masterpiece. And that's really my opinions of Barbie. I love Greta Gerwig. Don't get me wrong. I love Lady Bird. And I really, really love the Little Women remake that she did. Despite it being a story I could not care for, that film I thought was great. And so this isn't any indictment on Margot Robbie or Greta Gerwig. For me, this film I think is a little bit overrated, and that's just my opinion. However, I do think this should get one award, and that's Best Song for either of them, really. But maybe the Ken one? I quite like the Ken one, I think, if I had to pick. But I'd be happy for either songs to win. I think all the songs in this film are really well done, and I definitely think it deserves Best Song. So, there you are. It doesn't quite deserve Best Costume Design, nor Best Production Design. I'll tell you why later, okay? But if it did get either of those awards, I wouldn't be mad at all. Rustin. Okay. So this one might be the most controversial one because it is kind of like this by-the-books, biopic civil rights film. And maybe I'm biased because it's got Colman Domingo in the starring role. And that poor man had to suffer through 8 seasons of Fear the Walking Dead. So do you know what? He deserves the Best Actor Oscar. I don't think he should get it, but he deserves it. Because that man was tortured. So, listen, maybe that's why I watched it, by the way. I watched this one way before the Oscar noms came out, and I was so glad that he got nominated, because I think he's brilliant in it. I really do. And again, maybe I'm biased, but who cares? I think this is a good film. I like it. And maybe I'm just a sucker for civil rights films, and I kind of feel funny putting this above American Fiction, because American Fiction's message is kind of about, like, not having black stories just be about struggle. And this story is exactly that, and I'm sort of putting it above that film. But I really liked it. What can I say? It's a little generic at parts, sure, and I think it is very by the numbers, but I didn't know very much about Rustin, the person. I think I vaguely have, seen his name mentioned in things I've read and films I've seen, but I've never, really heard very much about the man himself, and so I found it really interesting. It could have been more interesting, though, if they actually went further and did kind of some of his work where it came to gay rights, but maybe that would have made the film a bit more muddied, possibly. But as it stands, I really liked Rustin. I thought it was a good-ass film. The Colour Purple. You'll never guess it, but this one has Colman Domingo in it too. And listen, I hate musicals. I fucking despise them. But I watched this thinking, oh god, I'm gonna hate it. And then I saw Colman Domingo was in it, and I was like, okay, alright. Okay, I like this already, a little bit. And do you know what? I really enjoyed it. I actually really enjoyed it. I normally hate musicals, but this one was really good. It's kind of another civil rights film-esque kind of, although it's not really much about that, in the sense of it's like, black Americans, but in, civil rights, pre-civil rights era, I guess. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought the main character was really interesting. I really loved, what's her name? The actress who's been nominated for Best Supporting Actress. Her name escapes me, but I thought she was really good in it too. I don't quite think she gets the nomination, but I would not be annoyed if she got it. And yeah, everything about it I thought was wonderful. I liked the music. I liked a lot of the set designs. I think the acting was very good. I normally hate musicals, and maybe the reason why it's low is because of, or lower than it could be, is maybe because of that reason. It did drag near the end for me. I think if it was half an hour shorter, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. And that's probably my major criticism, a few nitty things here and there. But overall, I didn't mind it. The Boy and the Heron. So I'm not your atypical anime fan. I like Miyazaki's, some of his films I think are really good. Some of them I think are overrated as hell. I haven't seen all of them, of course, so I've only seen like 4, maybe 5. The Boy and the Heron, though, I loved at times, and it bored me at times, if that makes sense. But I think overall the experience was definitely good. I think as a vibes film, it really works. As a story, it wasn't as engaging, but I was kind of just there for the visuals anyway. And the sort of sound design in this film is honestly crazy amazing. This is some of the really good sound design in this for sure. I loved a lot of the darker kind of adult themes. I went into this thinking it was a bit of a kid's film, but it really wasn't, and that was definitely a positive thing. I really liked the main character and the titular heron as well. I think those two were great, but I wish there was a bit more of a buddy up thing with those two. Instead, they kind of like separate at some points, and I just wish there was more interaction, maybe some bickering, maybe like that kind of good cop, bad cop vibe with them a bit more. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a pretty decent film, so I'm putting it here. Although there were things that in this that were like set up that didn't really pay off. They were kind of just there for the visuals. So there were some things I was a bit confused on, I guess. But overall, it was good. The Holdovers. Now, I've heard a lot of people say that this film is kind of Oscar baity and is very sort of generic, I guess. I keep using that goddamn word. Very by the books, very by, a simple beat-to-beat story. And there is nothing too surprising about it, and I will agree with that. I don't think there's anything too surprising with where the story goes. It's fairly obvious, although there's a few twists and turns that I didn't see necessarily coming. This film is, I think it's good. I just think it's a solid film. It's nothing crazy amazing, don't get me wrong, but I really love it, and I think it's got a lot of heart. And the main character, I think, is very likable, but also is a dick at the same time. But you understand why he's a dick, and obviously the main kid, I don't know the actors. I'm sorry, character. I forget the characters' names, but the kid, the main boy, he's the same way. Also very likable. And when we get to understand more about him, you feel very sympathetic towards him. But the heart and soul of this film has got to be Davina Joy Randolph as Mary in The Holdovers. I adored her, and so I think she should get the Best Actress. I think all the Best Actresses, none of them were like crazy great, but she was definitely really good, a solid performance, and really brought that character to life. And honestly, the was the heart of the film for me. And yeah, is the film a little bit corny? Is it a little bit by the numbers, sort of, simple? A little bit, but I loved it nonetheless. Thoroughly enjoyed the film, and I will definitely watch it again. So I don't know why. Part of me wants to put it lower, but I just can't. I would be lying to myself. So it's got to go here. But if you hate it for those reasons I've said, I can totally understand why, and I think you're fair to that opinion. It's fair that you have that opinion. Godzilla -1. So this, okay, I normally fucking hate Godzilla films or King Kong films. They annoy me. I always watch them and they always annoy me. This one though was brilliant. I do think, like the Holdovers, though, the story, the arc the character goes on, that is all, like, by the books, predictable, beat by beat shit, right? It's in the same sort of vein, I guess. That's why I guess they're together. The story with the main character sort of being this coward who didn't want to fucking kamikaze himself, and I would argue that wasn't really cowardism, that was survivalism, but whatever. And then he sort of goes, by the end of the film, he's changed. It's a very simple character arc, and you know where it's going. The twist at the end of the film, one of the final scenes, that shit annoyed me, because I'm like, there's no way that particular character survived that particular thing. We'll leave it at that. I don't want to get too spoilery. Yeah, the action's great, though. I love the fact that they had a good amount of Godzilla. Not too much, where it just becomes like we're focusing on the creature and there's no characters here. But not too little, where it's just a dick tease. Do you know what I mean? I think it was the right amount of Godzilla, if that makes sense. So, that's where it is. That's where I'm putting it. Godzilla, -1. El Conde, or the Count. My Spanish is terrible. The Count, okay? We'll go with the English, I'm sorry. This film is fucking bananas, and I absolutely love it. Part of me wants to put it higher, because I just love the concept. I just think some of the execution, I don't know, it dragged a little bit. I kind of wanted them to go a little bit more into the wackier elements. But this film is about... Augusto Pinochet is a immortal vampire, or not an immortal vampire, but he's a 200-something-year-old vampire, and this is after Pinochet is deposed and after he's, quote-unquote died, and is about his struggle with his family, and this sort of nun comes to, I guess, see if there's any financial accounts that are left, basically. It's a hard film to explain. It's fucking cuckoo bananas, and there's a cameo from a particular British politician near the end of the film, which had me in pieces. I don't want to say anything more about it. It's great. It's a nominate for Best Cinematography, and honestly, the cinematography in this is, at times, really, really cool. I don't think it quite deserves Best Cinematography, though, but I do think it deserves the nomination. And if it were to get cinematography, I wouldn't be too mad. But honestly, watch this. It's fucking bananas, this film, and I love it. To Kill a Tiger. This is a hard documentary to watch for many reasons, because it's basically about a father's struggle to get justice for the R-word of his 13-year-old daughter, and it's a gang R-word, if you know what I mean. So it's really horrible in that way. The subject matter is not pleasant, but this documentary is really respectful, and I think it does a great job at showing this struggle and this journey. And it's so hard to talk about, because it is really difficult, but I just love the father, the devotion he has. And obviously it's a film that takes place in India, and in a particular village where all the villagers just want the daughter to marry one of the attackers and just kind of be done with it, and just sort of sweep it under the rug. And obviously this particular case was historic in a lot of ways, and it kind of proved that, men can be charged for this crime. We don't have to sweep it under the rug. We can kind of stand up for what is right, sort of deal, I guess. Yeah, not really much more I want to say about it. Really great documentary. Definitely recommend, although obviously the subject matter is pretty difficult, so if that's probably not for you, then obviously give it a miss. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So, To Kill a Tiger. Society of Snow. So this is, of course, based on the true story of the Uruguayan rugby team that, of course, crash landed in the Alps, and they're kind of notorious, I guess, for the fact that they ended up resorting to cannibalism of the dead bodies in order to survive, because they knew that no one was looking for them and they were assumed dead. So this is a story, the actual real life story I'm talking about, that has baffled me for years. Not baffled me, but I've been very, very intrigued. I think it's an interesting take on human survival, and I don't necessarily blame the men for resorting to cannibalism whatsoever. I think it was morally justified in my opinion, and I'm sure that the loved ones would be okay with it. Maybe. Oh, I don't know. You can't really say that, can you? But in terms of the actual movie and the portrayal, I thought this was a really well done film. It really encapsulated that survival and the sort of desperation of the men and women. Obviously, I think the women are wiped out eventually, but the men that we, of course, end with. And it doesn't feel like this takes place in a day, you know? They really hammer the time frame well. And the desperation and the lack of connection and the sheer lack of hope that they all sort of end up getting at points, I think it's all just depicted so well. But also, it's very respectful to the survivors and also the people who didn't make it, unfortunately, too. Overall, great film, honestly. It's nominated for Best International. We know it's not going to get that, but it's also been nominated for Best Hairstyling and Makeup, and I wouldn't be sad if it got that. I don't think it should, out of the ones that are there, but I would be happy if it did. Yeah, overall, great film. I really enjoyed it. It's back-to-back international features. We've got The Teacher's Lounge, which is a German film. Now, when I first sort of read about this, I was like, I'm not going to like this. So bear in mind, this may be the low expectations as to why it's so high. And if you didn't like it, I can kind of see. I saw some people who really sort of hated it, but I loved it. I thought it was kind of interesting that they took such a trivial, setting, like it just in a school, and this teacher sort of around the fact that someone's stealing things in the staff room, in the teacher's lounge, of course, and so she accuses the person who she catches kind of on the video, but it's not 100% sure. It's definitely her, but we sort of think it's her, and so of course she calls her out. That particular teacher is fired or suspended or whatever it may be, but that teacher's son is in the protagonist's class and just starts causing havoc, and it's such a sort of low stakes in the sense of where it's set, but they do so much with tension and suspense and all that I think for that alone, I just love it. And I like films that do that aren't grandiose and huge with, big explosions and whatever, that are just set in a normal place, but do so much with the story and the characters. And I really loved it, honestly. So, Oppenheimer. Yes, it beat Barbie. So, when I first watched this film, I was a little apprehensive. I liked a lot of elements, but I felt it was a bit messy. It kind of feels like it's trying to be 3 films at once, in the sense that you've got the stuff with his security clearance, the stuff with the making the bomb, and also I think there's another bit as well. Yeah, like early on in his life as well. And it's like 3 different bits. And I really do think they should have ditched one of them. And I would have ditched the security clearance and the hearings with Strauss and everything. I think, from the moment he drops the bomb and his regret of it, like years later, I think that's what the film is. And I would have put it much higher if they were to streamline it a little bit more. And that's my, I guess, biggest contention with the film. I don't particularly think the acting is... I mean, the action's all solid. It's all solid. But it's nothing, like, crazy out there. Part of me wouldn't be too mad if Cillian Murphy got the award for Best Actor. I do think he deserves it to a degree. I do think there's just one person who, unfortunately, I don't like to, but unfortunately I think should get the Best Actor award, just because I think their performance is a bit more standout. But yeah, I mean, what can you say? It's Nolan, so you get what you get. Definitely not my favourite Nolan film. Again, I feel like I'm saying that with all the standard directors, but definitely a really enjoyable watch and an interesting story to portray, I suppose. I don't know what else to say. Oh, Kitty, what's her name, who played Kitty Oppenheimer? Why has she been nominated for Best Supporting Actress? She was in the film for like 5 minutes. And I think her scene's the worst scene, that girl boss scene, where she's like a completely irrelevant character, and then she just has some big speech. It was like, there was no setup for it whatsoever. And yeah, God. Ugh. Anyway, Oppenheimer. I part of me, also, Nolan, stop having loud, stupid Sound. Nolan has an issue with sound. That's another reason it's not any higher. He has a real problem with sound. Killers of the Flower Moon. So it's, of course, good old Scorsese film. I think DiCaprio definitely brings his all into this performance. It's not DiCaprio's best performance by any measure, but I think for the role it works quite well. Lily Gladstone has a pretty great performance too, although I don't think she should get Best Supporting Actress out of the ones, no, Best Actress out of the ones, provided by the Academy. We'll get on to who I think should get that in a moment. Well, in a while, I suppose. I love the costume design of this, the production design of this, so I do think this one should get costume design for best costume design. Either this or Barbie, but I think for this particularly, but just because they were so, from what I've read, they were very good with sort of historical accuracy, but also cultural accuracy where it came to the Native American characters. I think the story is just very riveting and great. My only criticism is DiCaprio's character, his arc is just, he doesn't really have one. He kind of starts as one man and he kind of ends that same man, is a dude who does love his wife, but is a scammer, essentially, or, is an arsehole. And he kind of ends, like, in the same way. He doesn't resort to, like, trying to kill her or something. And maybe if they kind of went a little bit away from history and actually, I do think this is based on real life, right? Or whatever it may be, or the source material anyway. If they went away from that a little bit, just to kind of give him a bit more of that edge near the end of the film. Kind of like in Wolf of Wall Street with DiCaprio's character, where he becomes, Jordan Belfort kind of becomes this abusive monster near the end. If they kind of gave him that bit more of an edge, I think I don't know, I think it would have justified it a bit more. Maybe I would have put in it a little bit higher. But yeah, really great film. I really loved it. Definitely not Scorsese's best, that's for sure, but definitely one of his good ones. God, I hate everything that this film is. The fact that it's pure Oscar bait, that it's Bradley Cooper sniffing his own fucking farts. But you know what? Credit where credit is due. This film is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So I went into it thinking I was going to hate it and it was going to be a fucking snooze fest. And it dragged at parts, it bored me at parts, but my god, this film is gorgeous. The cinematography in this film is fucking amazing. I don't know what else to say. I really love the cinematography in this film. And for that reason, I think it should get the award for best cinematography, okay? Some of the shots, the lighting, everything about it was just gorgeous. There were some really, really lovely shots in this film. And I think there is one other film which I'm also leaning to cinematography, and I'll talk about that when we get to it. But I think that particular film has a lot of awards, and I wanted to spare them out a little bit. So I'm going to give Maestro best cinematography for now. But one thing, the two awards I do think it really deserves is best makeup and hairstyling for a start, because the way that Bradley Cooper and I forget her name, Bradley Cooper's wife in the film, the way that they age and the way that they show that is so well done. Like, much better than, like, Napoleon, where there was nothing. Like, we were just meant to believe that Ridley Scott, that Joaquin Phoenix had aged, like, 10 years, In this film, you feel it. You feel the passage of time. And so that's why it deserves best makeup and hairstyling. But also, I think Bradley Cooper does deserve Best Actor. I think his performance has got a lot of range in this particular film. I think he shows, he really depicts that character, but he also depicts the way he ages, the way he changes, his personality, and like little ticks and here and there. And I do think it's a really good performance. And I hate to say it, but I do think he deserves the Best Actor award for that reason. But Cillian Murphy as a close second, as a very close second for sure. Yeah, this film for me, like I said, it dragged apart, but the presentation of it was gorgeous, and the story I did find very interesting. I knew nothing about this guy, and I ended up reading up about him. Of course, he was a conductor. But yeah, overall, great film, Maestro. God damn it. Nyad. So this is a film starring Jodie Foster and what's her name, the woman from American Beauty, as playing Nyad, or she plays Nyad, obviously, who is a retired Olympic swimmer. She's in her 50s, I think. 60s? Is it 50s or 60s? She's old anyway. And she decides to do something that she did in a youth but failed at, and that was swimming from Cuba to Florida in one fail swim, right? So one swim, Cuba to Florida, and it takes like 50 something hours. And I was pretty excited for it going in. Well, not like really excited, but I was like, we'll see how it is. I think it's great. It's a real struggle film, and I like struggle films where there's one clear goal, and it's almost ludicrous that this woman wants to do this, but she is persistent. But also they have these great moments of friendship between the two leads, and I wouldn't be mad if either of them got a best actress or best supporting actress nom, because I think they were both very good. But also like the supporting cast as well. The dude on the boat, Reese something, I forget the actor's name. His character was really good too, and I just like the way that they present it. Some of the visuals in this film are wacky, but obviously when Nayad, the woman, is hallucinating, we kind of almost get to see what she's seeing, and I really love that. Yeah, the presentation of this film was great, and I think, it could have been a bit more experimental with, cinematography, things like that, but I think the story was all there, the script was well written, I think the dialogue was good, and the only thing that might have elevated a little bit more for me, again, like I said, is maybe be a bit more experimental, but those visuals were really cool. The stuff where she's underwater and she's like, she's tripping balls. So, honestly, really love this film. Didn't expect to love it, but I really did. So, that's Nayad. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So, I really love the first one. I think the first one was just outstanding for animation-wise anyway. I'm normally not an animation fan, as I've mentioned before. But that original film, the very first one, was great. This one, I think, is a step up on the animation front. Like, geez, the animation is on steroids. It's wild. It's crazy. There's completely, the different types of animation blended really well together. And everything, the characters are expressive, even though they delve into different animations. And they did this, like I said, on steroids. I think the animation-wise, this film is better than the original, but on a story standpoint, it just wasn't as solid for me. It was still very good, don't get me wrong. Of course, this is part one of a sort of part two story, I guess, but it was a bit messy, I feel. I think in the first film they balanced the characters quite well. You had obviously OG Spider-Man, or Miles Morales, sorry. You had Miles Morales, you had Gwen Stacy. Those two were the clear kind of main characters, with the older Spider-Man kind of, being a major-ish character, but there. In this film, they have both Gwen Stacy and Miles, and then they also have, I think there's I forget his name, but the Indian Spider-Man, he kind of comes into it. I felt like that it wasn't as balanced as well, maybe. I don't know how to exactly kind of say it, but it felt a bit more messy in terms of story, and they sort of jump around a lot, I feel, and it wasn't as clear as the previous one, and I think they're a bit too ambitious with the wild antics. So that's the only reason it's not any higher, and it doesn't get best animation, although again, I would not be mad if it did get best animated feature. I just think there's one particular film that beats it for me. Quick break. We're going into the top 10s now, so these are the top 10 films that the Oscars have to offer, I guess. Do I regret some of them? Maybe a little bit. We'll see. But I do love all 10 of these films, so that's something at least. Yeah. Anyway, let's get into it with number 10. El Capitano, or the Captain. I don't know how to... Italian, whatever it is. Is it Italian or is it Senegalese? I don't know. Anyway, it's about... This film is... Oh no, I think they speak... Do they speak Italian? No, they speak French? What do they speak in Senegal? I don't even know. Anyway, this film is about two Senegalese teenagers who are cousins, who decide to essentially, get a better life in Europe. So they're refugees or migrants, whatever you want to call them. But they're trying to get a better life in Europe. So they go on this harrowing journey to get there. And oh my god, this film is depressing. It's such a downer, but in a good way, if you know what I mean. They really do a great job at showing you the difficulties of, such a journey and what these people go through to get a better life. Now, you can say what you want about, refugees or migrants, whatever you want to call them, for people who, seek asylum or asylum seekers, people who are trying to find a better life. But the journey is I think they're a bit naive at first, to be fair, and they get through it. And that scene in the desert is absolutely heartbreaking with that woman. Jesus. And the stuff in Libya as well. Everything about this film was tough to watch, and I think they did a great job with it. There is a scene, or a few scenes, where particular characters are floating in the air. We'll just say that, and that kind of tore me out of it a little bit. Like, it was almost a bit too comedic for me. Yeah. But overall, great film. Really liked it. I just think there was a part where the two characters get separated as well, and that was quite sudden, and maybe that's realistic, I guess, but the way that they then get back together, I don't know, it just felt a little rushed, maybe. I don't know. Maybe they could have done a bit more with that. But overall, very good. Number 10, The Eternal Memory. So this is a documentary that follows a journalist who has recently been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia, whatever it is. And it basically is just his wife sort of trying to get him to remember who he is, and we sort of follow them throughout a couple of days, basically, as his sort of, mental state deteriorates. It's a hard watch for sure. It's always a difficult and horrible thing, dementia, and seeing people lose their faculties and lose their memories, to the point where, there's a moment in the film where he doesn't even recognize a picture of himself and his wife, even though, both of them are in the room. It's really tragic, and I really love the way it's shot. I love the way it's sort of edited, and everything about it is well presented for sure, and it definitely is a emotional roller coaster of a film, definitely. And not really much more to say. I liked it a lot, just not as much as the others above it, and that's really what it comes down to. So that's number 10, The Eternal Memory. May, December. So when I first kind of read about this film before I watched it, I read a very vague synopsis, and all I knew is it was about an actress basically researching a role, and I thought it was going to be like this pretentious kind of, film. I normally don't like films that sort of depict, I guess, what would you call the upper 10% or whatever you want to call it, or 1%, people who are rich, with some rare exceptions here and there. And I was thinking, this isn't going to be great. But honestly, this film blew me away. It was very good. And it's basically Natalie Portman's character. She's this actress who's researching a role. She's going to be in this film, which is going to be depicting the life or adapting the life and story of this woman called Gracie, who basically had a relationship with a 13-year-old boy when she was, a couple, 30 years ago, whatever it was, or 20 years ago. I forget exactly how much time's passed. And now both Joe, who's the boy that she had the affair with, or the boy she groomed, I guess, and her are married, and they have kids who are basically graduating college. They're all sort of grown up. And I think it's such an interesting subject matter, and it's very, if the roles were reversed, we would think, I think, very strongly, in one particular direction. Not trying to say that I don't think that what it is abuse, but I really love Julianne Moore's performance. She does such a great job at showing this kind of manipulative person who I don't think even knows she's a manipulator. But it's written really well. This script is tight, so good. Joe, and I think the subtlety with his character, with Charles Melton? Charles Melton's character. He is really well portrayed, I think, and you feel for the guy so much, because it's got to be the most confusing thing ever. And I think Natalie Portman's character too is also a great protagonist and a great vehicle to sort of explore this story and kind of unwrap the threads of this mystery almost. And just from a technical standpoint, the way that this film is shot is so good. There's these massive long shots that they do where the actresses are just, and actors are just on their game for sure. Like, they just don't cut away forever. Like, there's not even any fake cuts. They like follow the characters, and yeah, honestly, really, really great watch. Don't want to say much more about it, but really, really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend it. And I think it tackled the subject matter really well. Four Daughters. So this is a documentary that is a Tunisian documentary, and it takes place in a household where there's a woman who has four daughters, of course, the oldest two of which left to join like a radical Islamic group where a few years ago, I think. And they basically, the film crew sort of have this manufactured documentary style where they bring in two actresses to play the two oldest daughters, but also actors and actresses to play the other parts of the other sort of family members and people, especially when it's too distressing for the mother, for example. And they basically reenact those moments, those memories leading up to the two girls being radicalized and leaving. And it's very good for a number of reasons. I think the way, again, technical standpoint, the way it's shot, the way it's everything like that, I think was brilliant. Some of the sound design was very good too. But what I really love is the performances from the, fake daughters, but also just the way that we see this family, and I think it's presented really well and really tragic. Like, the mother, especially, I find her a very complex character. I know she's a real person, but, she's this woman who has ideals for her daughter. Like, she wants her daughters to wear like the burqa and all that, but she herself hates it and she refuses to wear it. And so she's in this very interesting position where, she's kind of, in a sense, she's like a hypocrite, but you can understand why maybe the daughter's left as well, because she rules with an iron fist. And yeah, maybe, I mean, obviously it's Tunisia, so it's a different time, a different place, different culture and everything. So who am I to judge entirely? But you can kind of see why they left. And I really think the documentary just explores each of these women really well. And I personally just thought it was great. It was funny at times. It was tragic at times. It's everything I want from a documentary. And I do like that sort of manufactured element of it, and I think that really elevated the story. So, Four Daughters, very, very recommend it. Very recommend it, yeah, that's the word I'm going to use. Robot Dreams. So now we're in the sort of top 7 movies. All of these films, I believe, should get one or more of the Academy's awards. So for Robot Dreams, I think this should be the contender for Best Animated Feature. I think this one should get it. Now, this film is a silent film, basically. There is no dialogue. There is obviously text and stuff and sounds, but there is no dialogue. And straight off the bat, I love that. I like films that can tell a story entirely through visuals and visuals alone. I think that's an impressive feat. And this film definitely did that. It showed a compelling, cute little story. I mean, don't get me wrong, this isn't like a mature, animation at all. This is kind of for kids, But I think everything it did was just so charming. I really love the sound design in this is excellent, and I think that's why I elevate it over the Spider-Man film. I think in terms of animation style and the kind of crazy feats that it achieves, that probably should go to Spider-Man. But in terms of like an animated feature as a whole, I think I'd give it to this. That's why I'm giving this the best animated feature, because I just think everything about it, the animation is really, really nice, really, really cute. The world that they build is so detailed and so expressive. The characters themselves, like their facial expressions, the entire story has to be told through them, and it does an excellent job at portraying emotions and feelings just through facial expressions. And it's just a cute film, all right? I really love it, and that's why it's not anything crazy, out there in the sense that it does something revolutionary with storytelling. It's just a simple story about a dog who wants to get his robot back, goddammit, and that's why I love it. And they do these like little dream sequences in the film where like the robot dreams and the dog dreams about different scenarios, and I kind of like that as a way into their mind and into their internal thoughts and what they're thinking. So yeah, overall, this is a really, really good animation. I highly recommend it to any animation fans. So yeah, best animation, in my opinion, Robot Dreams. Number 6, The Zone of Interest. So this is a film that, when I sort of first watched it, on reflection as I walked out of the cinema, I was kind of thinking, it was good, but it was a bit boring, if you know what I mean. And that was kind of my opinion. But now I've sort of let it sit with me a bit more. It's a film I can't stop thinking about, that's for sure. I love all the technical elements of it. I think everything like on that front is superb. And if the story just gripped me ever so slightly, this could be, like, honestly, number 2 or 3 on my list for sure. But just because the story kind of, for me, was a little bit too meandering at points, that's why I'm putting it here. But even that is like a nitpick. Like, I would still definitely watch this again. There's so much to love about it. It's a Holocaust film, but in a very mature, sort of subtle way. If you didn't know, well, you obviously, I think I'd say if you didn't know, you wouldn't know, but I think it's kind of obvious that they're next to the, a big, they're basically next to Auschwitz, so you can hear the screams and the cries and the trains and the gunshots and all that. And so that's why I think this film should get Best Sound, because I think it incorporated all of that so well into the scenes that we were watching. But basically we're following the dude who runs I forget his name now, but the dude who ran Auschwitz, or who basically made it what it was, and his family, who live in a nice, idyllic house right next to the concentration camp. And it is a film that really sort of sits and stews with these people. There isn't much story on that front, I guess, but it is just kind of about their lives and sort of, I guess, almost the willful ignorance of what's next door, although they know exactly what is next door. But the fact that they just sort of accept it and move on and live a normal life despite the horrors going on next door. And that's what I sort of love about it. I think it's a very unique way to kind of tell a World War II sort of Holocaust film, but it does it in a way that doesn't feel exploitative or anything like that. We're not meant to like these characters, that's for sure. We're not. And there's some great scenes. One of the scenes that honestly is just stuck with me is there's a scene with the kid, I think it's his son, playing like with dolls in his room, and then you hear like someone in the concentration camp sort of say, "Oh, that's it, drown him in the river," and the kid looks up at the window and then just goes right back to his toys. And it's that scene alone is and the ending scene I thought was kind of good. It was sort of out there. I didn't expect them to end it sort of with a time jump, but I really like that as an ending, with him sort of retching, trying to be sick but he's unable to. Yeah, overall I honestly love this film. I think there's so much good about it, and I would definitely recommend it to any film buffs. But anyone who's sort of a casual film watcher, it's probably not for you. It's probably going to be a snooze fest, and that's okay. If anyone sort of hates this film because it's a bit boring, I can completely understand them, and I think it's fair. But it's the problem with some of these sort of vibe films, or these films, that they are sort of like Marmite, in the sense that some people absolutely adore them and some people can't bear them. So keep that in mind if you're thinking about watching this one. 20 Days in Mariupol. So we've not got very many films left now, and this one I think should get Best Documentary Feature. Now, I personally am a little bit of a sucker when it comes to war journalism. I think that is a lot more impressive than anything else you could do with a documentary. I think, unless like the documentary is edited like really, really poorly or something, I think I'm always going to favor war journalism over any other documentary. I did it with For Sama a couple years ago when For Sama came out, which was of course in the Syrian conflict, and this one is in, of course, Ukraine, in Mariupol, the city. So basically this follows a guy who is in the city whilst the Russian invasion is happening, whilst people are getting bombed, and this guy was the dude who leaked a lot of the footage that showed what Russia was, really doing, that they were targeting civilian areas on purpose. And I think this film, more than anything, is just so important for misinformation for a start. I see so many people defending Russia, and it's crazy to me that you can defend any sort of action that they do. I mean, even if you think the war is just, regardless, what happens to these civilians is not, you can't say that that's a lie. I mean, we see it in this film, and that's why I think it's so good. But I also think that this film is, on a technical standpoint, not only just the subject matter, on a technical standpoint, it's really neatly edited. It has this gimmick of 20 days, and we follow, said 20 days, and I think that works as a nice structure, like sort of narrative, thingamajiggy for the film. There's definitely some harrowing, horrible images in this film that the camera doesn't shy away from, and I commend him for that. And the fact that he was, him and his crew were almost staring down the barrel of tanks and guns and everything is insane. And I just think, God, I could go on about it, but I think this is very, very good. It's much better than, was it last year's Russia Bad documentary, as they call it? Last year's one was pretty boring, whereas this one isn't. It's really well done, and I really, really do hope this gets the best documentary award. So, there we are. Number 3 is Perfect Days. Wow, this sounded so boring. It's about a man who cleans toilets, and that's pretty much it. And honestly, if I was to describe the film to you, I would say a man who cleans toilets has his routine a little bit upended. That's all I would say the film is. It's very much a vibes film, alright? You're here for the sound design and the acting and the vibes, basically. And I love it. I absolutely adore this film. It's almost like an ASMR video, I guess. I don't know. It's just such a relaxing film. It went by so quickly. Didn't feel its runtime whatsoever. I felt like I was sat there for 20 minutes. It went by that quickly. And yeah, everything about it was so great. I think the character was really well acted. Some of the supporting cast are a little, I'm not sure because of the language thing. I've heard people say that the performance isn't great. It didn't bother me too much, but I have heard that. But I liked everything about it. I liked all the characters personally. And yeah, it's just a vibes film. There's not really much more to say about it. Like, I would definitely go watch it. In terms of a plot, I mean, there isn't much of one. Although I hear people say that there is no story. I think there is, to the extent that this guy has his routine, he loves his job, he really works hard at his job as well. And then these sort of events happen, several different events that aren't all connected, but these events happen that sort of begin to uproot him from his usual routine of, getting up, going work, having, his shave, whatever, having his little drink at the bar, going home, sleeping. It's sort of, that's what I'm trying to say. It's sort of, these events kind of uproot that structure. And so there is a story, and I feel like he does change a little bit too. There is an arc there. It's very subtle, and I think it's a lot more realistic, but there is definitely one there. And so that's why I think this film should get Best International Feature. I know it's not going to get it. I know Zone of Interest is going to get it. But regardless, I think this film should be the one to win it. And that is my number 3, Perfect Days. Anatomy of a Fall. So I like a good murder mystery, okay? I can't lie. Murder mysteries, they wrap me up. So this film kind of is almost like a murder mystery, but not like any other, in the sense that we don't know if it was an accident or if it was an actual murder. And a lot of this film is also a courtroom drama, and I do love a good courtroom drama. I think especially this courtroom drama, the section of this film that's a courtroom drama, is really, really well done. I think it doesn't feel cliche at all. It feels real. They clearly went through the research and they presented it like an actual court case, or at least it seems that way, not like a sort of TV sham courtroom, which is fake as shit, This one was, just really good in terms of that. The music in this film is great. The editing is amazing. So I do think this one should get Best Editing Award, but I also think this film should get Best Original Screenplay, just because I think it's so tight. The dialogue is so excellent. Every line means something more than just one thing. None of the lines are redundant. You kind of get the editing as well is so good. I mean, the performance by Sandra Huller, what her name is, she's excellent. I think the kid in this is excellent as well. Normally, kid actors can be a bit hit or miss, but the kid in this did an excellent job. The arguments between the couples feel real. Everything about it is just, great. The only thing I had was that they're like this almost this middle class kind of upper middle class family, with one of them's like an author, right, and the other's half successful author. That kind of was like it felt a little bit like Marriage Story in that sense, where it's two actresses. I wish they were a little bit more relatable, but again, that's like the tiniest of nitpicks. Okay, the dog was a good actor as well. Like, Jesus, that dog did a good performance. Give that boy or girl a little treat. Anyway, yeah, great story. It leaves you with a lot of questions and not with answers. Don't go into this thinking that you're going to get all the answers, because you're not. But that's, I think, what makes it excellent, because it's kind of the nature of any true murder mystery or any true crime. How do we know exactly if she is guilty or not unless she tells us? We'll never know. And that's going to be the case in this world, right? In this story world. The characters are never going to truly know, did she kill this guy or not? You know, we don't know. And that's what I think is quite excellent about it. I'm glad they didn't answer that question, because, you know, that's the reality of things like this. You will never know. And you can convict her and send her to jail on the evidence that you have, but how do you know she's guilty or not? You really don't. That's why probably you should acquit, because the glove don't fit. Okay, that particular case was a bit more cut and dry. But anyway, yeah, overall, I just love this film. I definitely will be watching it again. I definitely will be showing people it. Amazing. It's unfortunate though that they are French, so that does mean it can't be number one. But we have our number one pick. Can we have a little drum roll? I mean, I feel like everyone knows what it is, but we'll do that drum roll anyway. Poor Things. Poor Things. What can I say about this film? So, I think this film should get Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress for Emma Stone, Best Supporting Actor for Mark Ruffalo, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Score, and Best Production Design. I think it should get all 7 of those, honestly. This film is just on another level of hilarious, interesting, quirky, fucking batshit. It's everything about it is brilliant, and I love this film so much. I'm a massive fan of Yorgos Lanthimos. I really love The Favourite. I really, really love The Lobster, and I'm quite like Hunting of a Sacred Deer as well. This film is by far his best, and I think he's given it his all. It's kind of every little element of his previous films sort of all come into this film to make it perfect. So what is this film about? This is about Bella Baxter, who is a Frankenstein-esque experiment from a absolutely mad doctor played by Willem Dafoe. And she decides to go out into the world to explore what it is to be a woman, basically. And so in a sense, it's very similar to the Barbie film in the themes it shows, and the message it has as well, I think, too. But I think this is partially why I put the Barbie film lower than I did, is because I think this film kind of does what Barbie does, but 10 times better. It's more subtle, it's more thought-provoking, and it's more nuanced. And that's why I just think this film is... Yeah, that's why I lowered Barbie, and that's why this film is number one. God, where do I start? It's hilarious. I was non-stop laughing. I've seen it twice now. Non-stop laughs from start to finish. I think the script, the dialogue is just perfect. Every bit of dialogue means something, whether it be to instill the themes, to drive the plot, or just for comedy. But every line of dialogue feels purposeful. So that's why I think it should get Best Adapted Screenplay. Bella Baxter, Emma Stone playing her, is wonderfully amazing. She starts the performance off in this very kind of broken, because she's a baby, basically, right? She started off in this broken sort of speech, these broken walks and everything like that. And slowly as the film goes along, she slowly starts to evolve. And it's very, very subtle. It's only when you rewatch it, you notice it. But she has these, she slowly kind of progresses into intelligence, and also in the way she speaks, the manner in which she speaks, her movement as well. It's all very well done. The cinematography in this film is excellent. A lot of fisheye shots in this film, but I love them. I think they were purposeful, and they definitely elevated the scene. Some of the cinematography and the visuals are beautiful. A lot of these sort of almost mythic skies. They have a lot of like locations like with Lisbon and places like that and Athens where they kind of make them these almost fantasy like places, and I just think it's beautiful. Every shot of the new locations is really, really good. Mark Ruffalo, the Hulk, was fucking excellent in this. Honestly, I really do believe he deserves that award. That man has enjoyed the MCU for too long. Give him an Oscar. Yeah, he was excellent. I think his character, the arc that he goes off, he sort of starts as this like fuckboy basically, and he ends by, you know, he was absolutely he becomes absolutely in love with Bella, and to the point where he's just broken by the end of it because she wouldn't do what he told her what he told her to do, you know, and he didn't get her, so he feels kind of betrayed and awful. Willem Dafoe's character, I think he's great too, has a great arc, and what's his name, the one who plays Max, was really funny too. God, the comedy in this is great as well. I keep saying the comedy, but the comedy, man, that dance scene, the punching the baby, what else? The stuff, the lines. Willem Dafoe's lines were absolute bangers. Can we give credit to him with the "you can't hold your bladder for 5 minutes"? What, you're a 5-year-old? Like some of his lines were absolutely brilliant. Or he's injected heroin in between his toes. Like, yeah, this film was just absolutely amazing. I think it's a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. Okay, I love it. There's a lot of sex in this film, so if you are going to watch it, be prepared. It definitely deserves that 18 rating. But I think it doesn't feel exploitative. It feels necessary to show it almost, you know? I think the sex scenes were needed. You would lose out a lot if you didn't have them, and I think the film wouldn't be as good without them. So I do think they were purposeful. So that is my number one pick for all the films that the Academy has put forward for awards. The best film, in my opinion, is Poor Things. I'm a little biased because I'm a massive fan of the director, but my expectations were high going into this, and they were surpassed. So I think that's a good measure. Because normally when I have high expectations, I'm normally stupid. This is why I don't try and watch trailers, because when I have high expectations, they're normally not met. But I had a high expectations for this going in, really, really excited, and I felt like they were surpassed. So I think I'm correct with this film being number one. So that is it from worst to best. Yeah, I don't think this award season's been too bad. I think there's definitely been some great films in there. In terms of like actual terrible films and like terrible shorts, I think there was only a few. I think Elemental was definitely one of the worst, and The After I didn't like, but maybe that was just my taste. The Creator and Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning and Indiana Jones were all not great either, but not amazing anyway, for me anyway. I know there's some Mission Impossible fans, I don't want to offend them too badly. But anyway, that's it for my video. Tell me your thoughts. What do you think are the top 10 best Oscar films? And I guess I'll see you in about a couple of months whenever I can be asked making another video. This was a long one, and it took a lot of effort, so yeah. But I wanted to sort of showcase and document the fact that I watched all the Oscar films and my thoughts about them before the ceremony, so that's what I want to do. Anyway, I might actually do a Oscar react video. We'll see how it goes. But thanks for watching this particular video. Goodbye. It was a short one, I swear.